In less than an hour, Taylor's car was running like new. Ash wiped his hands on a rag, casually tossed it into the corner of the garage, then slid into the driver's seat, with a posture that made it seem as though he held the entire world in his grasp. I took my time buckling up, glancing at him out of the corner of my eye. He didn't say a word, just started the engine, pulled out of the parking lot, and smoothly headed toward the neighborhood where I lived, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. The silence dragged on for far too long, heavy enough to almost crush us. So naturally, I decided to break it. "All right, let me ask you something serious," I said, turning slightly toward him. "What's your favorite color?" He didn't even glance at me. "Black." I nodded solemnly, as if I'd just absorbed some earth-shattering revelation. "Favorite food?" "Tacos." Another pause followed. I narrowed my eyes and stared at him, thoroughly puzzled. That actually sounds kind of normal. He glanced at me quickly, his expression softening from its earlier coldness to reveal a barely perceptible tenderness. His tone also grew lighter. "Don't get used to it." I grinned and gave the dashboard a gentle kick with my foot. "Favorite movie?" He hummed, a verbal response at least. We were making progress. But before he could answer, I dramatically raised my hand. "Wait a minute. No. I already know all the answers." Lowering my voice, I mimicked his deep, gravelly tone. "Favorite color? Black. Favorite food? Sand. Favorite hobby? Sulking in dark corners. My favorite music?" The moans of agony. From the other side of the car came an extremely faint, almost imperceptible sound, like he'd tried to suppress a chuckle but hadn't quite succeeded. The sound was soft and tender, landing right in my ear, and somehow it stirred within me a delicate, sweet warmth, as if I'd just sucked on a melting fruit candy. I could even picture the curve of his lips, and my heart inexplicably lost its rhythm. My fingertips began to tremble ever so slightly. I froze, turning sharply toward him. And there it was, a barely there hint of a smile, like a tender sprout just poking through the earth on a spring day, fleeting yet undeniably real. His mouth curved upward ever so slightly, the arc so subtle it was almost invisible, but enough to soften the sharpness of his otherwise cold, hard features by half. And, oh my God, was that a dimple? I blinked, my jaw hanging open in stunned disbelief. My heart was pounding against my chest, as if it were about to leap right out. Just now, in that split second, I clearly saw a tiny indentation on his right cheek, a shallow dimple, yet strikingly distinct and impossible to ignore. No way. It couldn't be true. How could this tall man, who frowns often, has a short fuse, and exudes an intimidating presence, possibly have dimples? It's just so unfair. Totally against the grain of logic. I stared at him for far too long, and with growing dread, I realized I was staring at him as if he were some dangerously fascinating piece of art. My cheeks instantly flushed with heat. I cleared my throat loudly, then abruptly shifted my gaze out the window, pretending that the trees flashing by were somehow utterly mesmerizing. So calm, Penny. So incredibly calm. The car glided smoothly along, the tires barely whispering against the road surface. I tried my best to maintain my composure, as if nothing had just happened, no little existential crisis triggered by a half-smile, half-frown. A few seconds later, my stomach gave me away. Bark. It let out a loud, resonant bark, so loud that Asher glanced at me briefly, raising one eyebrow in silent disbelief. I pulled my hoodie tighter around myself, feeling utterly mortified. "I'm fine," I blurted out quickly. Asher didn't say a word. Instead, he abruptly turned into a narrow alleyway, not the way toward my house. I sat up straight, frowning deeply. Where are we going?" "To buy you something to eat," he said as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I told you, I'm fine." He shot me a look, a flat, expressionless stare that saw right through my lie in an instant. Fine. Apparently, my stomach had other ideas. I crossed my arms, glaring at him in annoyance. He shook his head, his lips twitching slightly, as if holding back another smile. "You really are a handful." He muttered. I grinned to myself, feeling like I'd won. "Pizza okay?" he asked. "Perfect," I said. "Honestly?" Right now, even if they served me sand, just as long as I could avoid going home alone, I'd take it. A few minutes later, he pulled the car into the small parking lot in front of a plain, unassuming pizzeria, a place with a neon sign and peeling paint, plus a hand-painted banner that boasted, in somewhat uneven handwriting, the best pizza in town. We got out of the car and headed toward the door. It was then that I noticed something. As we stepped inside, everyone turned to stare at us. I wasn't sure whether it was because Asher was so tall, really tall, or maybe it was his posture, poised and ready, as if he were about to leap into battle at any moment. Or perhaps it was just him. Well, it's so striking, not in that refined, model-like way. No, this is a different kind of striking, dangerous, sharp-edged, the kind that makes you think, my goodness, who let this walking hormone out? Instinctively, I straightened my spine, acutely aware of just how petite and utterly unique I felt standing beside him. We were about to head toward the counter, or rather, we were trying to head toward the counter, when someone called our names. Penny. Asher. Without even thinking twice, we both turned around. Asher's body moved instinctively, his shoulder shifted slightly, positioning himself between me and whatever might be coming our way, like a living shield. The movement was so fast, so reflexive, that my heart skipped a beat. But then the newcomer stepped into view, and it was Taylor. He bounded across the restaurant toward us, jumping and bouncing like a golden retriever spotting its owner in the park. "I'm so glad you're still here. Come on, sit with us," he said with a smile. I glanced behind him and saw a table full of familiar faces that, at this moment, I couldn't have been less eager to see. Every hair on my body stood on end, and a wave of deep-seated resistance surged up from within me like an overwhelming tide. I absolutely didn't want to be anywhere near these people, let alone watch Taylor's carefree, self-centered demeanor any longer. My fingertips felt icy cold, and my body instinctively recoiled, trying to escape this suffocating scene. Ash clearly felt the same way, because he said flatly, no. Meanwhile, I started stammering out excuses. Actually, we were thinking of grabbing a few things and then, but Taylor had already grabbed my arm without a word. His grip firm yet gentle, pulling me toward the table as if I were nothing more than an object he was dragging along. I shook my head frantically, my mumbled refusal stuck in my throat. But he completely ignored my frantic gaze and tense body, as if my wishes didn't matter a bit. Desperate, I glanced back at Asher. He stood there for a split second, his expression frozen, as if weighing whether killing someone would land him in trouble with the law. Then he sighed, a sigh that felt like the longest, most helpless one I'd ever heard. Still, he kept following me. Right now, being crammed into this crowded round booth alongside a bunch of strangers I didn't know was about the last thing I wanted to do. And yet here I was, sitting with my arms crossed tightly over my chest, my back pressed firmly against the worn leather seat, counting down every single second until I could finally escape this place.
Because honestly, I'm such a goddamn idiot. I should have just taken her home according to plan, simple, clean, hassle-free, but no, I had to go and feed her instead, and now she's ended up right into that fool Taylor's trap. Taylor, that selfish bastard, never once realized he'd hurt anyone. All he ever cared about was his own little world of noise and revelry, treating Penny's hurt like air and her wishes like a joke. It's absolutely infuriating. And now look at the mess we're in. I'm squeezed in here, barely able to catch my breath, and if anything goes wrong, I'm ready to flip the whole table over. Penny's sitting to my left, wedged between me and Taylor. Every time she moves, her knee brushes against mine. Meanwhile, Taylor, God bless his idiotic heart, is locked in an intense debate with some guy across the table about which pizza topping is the best, as if the fate of the universe depended on it. I turn my head slightly and glance over. Penny's covering her mouth with her hand, smiling softly, her eyes sparkling brightly, her cheeks flushed pink. Clearly, she's not laughing at me, she's laughing at them. Laughing at all of this. Before I can even look away, my gaze lingers. I've got to admit, she's pretty interesting, in her own quirky way. If her barrage of questions earlier was any indication, she's also incredibly creative, quick-witted, and brilliantly unique. And she's just so warm, Always so warm. I love how she gradually lets her guard down around me. I love the way she smiles at me and plays around with me. I love the way her eyes light up as she stares at me, full of curiosity and wonder. But the stronger this feeling grows, the more desperately I need to stop, right now. I clench my fists, digging my nails deep into my palms. The sharp pain keeps me awake, forcing me to suppress the swirling emotions welling up inside me. She's Taylor's girlfriend. This is an absolute red line, a boundary I can't cross, not even by a single step. Before I could dwell any longer on how much I'm violating my principles, a voice cut through the noise. "Hey, I've never seen you before," I said, blinking slowly as I turned my head. To my surprise, the dark-haired girl on the court was sitting just 2 seats away, leaning forward and practically leaning right into me. Her false eyelashes fluttered as if they might take flight at any moment. If I remembered correctly, her name was Rebecca. Great. Just what I needed. Before I could even open my mouth to respond, Taylor, like some proud, clueless little brother, jumped in. He served in the Navy. He just got back last week. I fought the urge to kick him under the table. Rebecca's smile sharpened further. "Oh, Navy guy," she said, twirling a strand of hair around her finger as if she was starring in a terrible teen idol drama. "So sexy." I snorted, a non-committal, brief, and brusque response, but that didn't stop her. She kept talking non-stop, now praising him, now asking silly questions, now letting out fake laughs, while I offered only the bare minimum of responses, trying not to turn into a complete jerk. At least not entirely. Penny beside me shifted slightly, and for a fleeting moment, I thought she might be feeling uncomfortable too. Or maybe that was just my own wishful thinking. Because right after that, as expected, the brunette girl sitting on Taylor's other side chimed in, "You as good at soccer as your little brother." Her voice was soft and sweet, and as she spoke, she leaned against Taylor, her hand, coincidentally, resting on his shoulder. Taylor grinned broadly, basking in all the attention as if it were his last meal on Earth. I couldn't be bothered to reply, I just grunted again. Football. Oh my God. I glanced down at Penny. She was sitting rigidly now, her hands tightly clasped in her lap, a forced smile plastered across her face, a barrier she'd erected to keep everyone at bay. Taylor hadn't noticed. Of course not. That heartless, clueless jerk could see nothing but his own image and the thrill of the moment. He couldn't even spot his girlfriend's hurt, let alone pierce through the veneer of that fake smile on her face. He was still gesticulating excitedly, bragging as if Penny's departure were some trivial little matter, utterly disgusting. The anger was almost overwhelming, threatening to burst through the last shred of my self-control. He was too busy basking in everyone's attention, talking about how great the field practice had been since Penny left, how much fun everything had been, and how well Rebecca and the others had stepped in to fill her role. Penny nodded, still wearing that saccharine, artificial smile. "Sounds really fun," she said, her voice light and bright, but I could feel it, her body tensed up beside me. Her knees stopped trembling. The light in her eyes dimmed slightly, hidden behind that practiced smile she'd used to fool everyone else. Everyone except me. I sat there, my jaw clenching tighter and tighter, rage burning beneath my skin. Not at her. At him. At all of them. Across the table, Joe, the guy who'd just been arguing with Taylor about the ingredients, was staring at me. Staring for a long time. Glaring, as if he were sizing up a stray dog darting out of an alleyway. "So," Joe said, his voice loud enough to make the conversation at the table pause briefly, "why did you come back?" I blinked slowly, my gaze icy cold. "No comment," I said simply. Short. Flat. A warning, if only he had any sense. But Joe grinned, leaned forward, and drew closer to the table. "Come on now," he said. "Aren't all you Navy guys just big talkers? What's the matter? Did you get sent back because you couldn't handle the rigors of military life?" My fist clenched tightly beneath the table. Say another word, and I'd wipe that smug grin right off his face. Deep down, I could feel that shift, the state they trained me to enter when words alone couldn't solve the problem. But just then, thank goodness, the waiter arrived carrying a huge pizza tray, slammed it down onto the table with such force that the conversation at the table came to an abrupt halt. I didn't move. I kept staring straight at Joe across the table, staring for far too long. So long that the smile on his face began to fade, unease crept across his features, and finally, he looked away and reached for the pizza. Still pretty smart. I slowly exhaled through my nose, forcing myself to suppress the violent impulse deep within. When I finally turned my head toward the booth, Taylor was already busy piling pizza onto his plate, chatting and laughing with that brunette girl. Of course. Penny sat there, her hands still clasped tightly in her lap, her shoulders still unnaturally tense. I roughly grabbed a slice of pizza and swiftly placed it onto her empty plate without saying a word. She blinked, staring at the pizza on her plate as if she hadn't expected it at all. Maybe she really hadn't. Then I took a slice for myself, leaned back against the chair, and deliberately ignored the stupid, hollow noise buzzing around us. I hadn't come here for them. I wasn't staying here for them, either. I'd come here for her. It had always been about her, even when it shouldn't have been. I caught a glimpse of her out of the corner of my eye as she picked up the pizza, her slender fingers gently taking small bites, and a deep, intense emotion welled up inside me. It was mine. The thought burst forth uncontrollably, echoing sharply in the depths of my mind with a searing intensity. I clenched my fists so tightly that my knuckles turned white, my arm muscles tense and rigid, squeezing every ounce of strength into suppressing this damned thought, again and again, until sharp, dull pains began to radiate from my chest and my breathing grew heavy. I even deliberately shifted slightly to the side, creating a bit of distance between us, reminding myself not to cross the line. I forced it down, hard, so forcefully that it felt almost like self-punishment. Even if my gaze slipped involuntarily toward her, even if my fingertips still lingered with the faint sensation of having accidentally brushed against the sleeve of her shirt just moments ago, I had to keep pushing it away, because Penny Vale doesn't belong to me. She's my younger brother's girlfriend, and she'll never belong to me. This realization feels like a cold blade, firmly lodged in my heart, reminding me that all my restraint must continue.